Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thanks.
Excellent. Wonderful. So we've still got about 2 minutes. It looks like some folks are still hopping on the call. We'll go ahead and wait a few more minutes so that we get as many folks as possible. Um, but let's see. It looks like we've got some panelists who are still hopping on. We have about 4 or 5 of them today, correct?
Yeah, there, I just changed my name. Yeah, myself, and then Tom is going to kick it off first, and then punt it to me, Travis, and Susan.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. Well, for those who are hopping on the call right now, I just want to welcome you. It's always good to see our members, and it's always good to have interesting and important conversations with our members. And we're really happy to be able to host a call today about vehicle electrification. And we know that, especially at a time when there's so many questions about how to move forward and for forgive the pun, but not wanting certain priorities that we had before COVID to stall out. It's important to kind of see this intersection between our current moment with the COVID-19 pandemic, and even issues of climate change, where they intersect, how they intersect, and how recovery is going to happen as those two as we approach those two issues together. And so it is an important conversation to have today, looking at our goals for addressing climate change that are already in place, and moving those ahead as we move the entire economy ahead simultaneously. So unfortunately, Ann Silver, our CEO, who is going to moderate the call today, is not able to join us. She's actually on 2 calls simultaneously, especially with the Nevada legislature convening at the moment. She's getting pulled in a lot of different directions. So she sends her greetings and her apologies that she's not able to be with you all today. But I'm here. My name is Christine Brown. I'm the Director of Member Engagement for the Chamber. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone today and to be with this great panel. So our Path Forward series is generally a Q&A series. But this call is going to be a little different today in that we're going to hear from our panelists, and they will go ahead and introduce themselves, which would be great. And they're going to do a little presentation for us, share a couple of slides, of course, and then we'll get into Q&A a little bit later into the call. So if there's a participant here, if one of our members has a question for one of our panelists, I do encourage you to use chat. That's what chat is there for us. So please go ahead and use the chat function if you have any questions for any panelist at any time during the call, and we will go ahead and try and address those questions at the end. So with that, because it's 11:01 and it looks like perhaps we're ready to go, I'm just going to turn it over to our panelists to get started.
Great. Well, this is Catherine Stankin. I'm the Policy Director with Plug in America, and I'm going to try to share my screen right now. And there we go. And now I'll just go from the beginning. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to kick it off to Tom Polakalis right now, who's going to welcome us all, and then he's going to turn it back to me. So Tom, take it away. Tom, I think you're muted. Can anybody else hear Tom? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, Tom, we'll circle back to you at the end. Tom is going to kick it off because he's a Reno native and he loves to work on these issues, but for the sake of time, we'll just keep going through this. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today. And again, I'm Catherine Stankin, and I may look familiar to you because I did come and speak to the Reno Chamber back in November about transportation electrification and other clean energy initiatives, along with Emily Duff from Ceres. And so there's been so much happening in the past 7 to 8 months that we thought it'd be great to circle back to you all, let you know the different market updates, and then also bring forward to your attention a really important policy announcement that Nevada just made and how you can be a participant in that process. So as Christine was just saying, we have a couple slides and then we'll get to the Q&A. So first off, for a market update, I just wanted to let everybody know that the electric pickups are now officially on their way. So Rivian, Nikola, Lordstown, and Ford, those are all different automakers in this space. Rivian just received a $2.5 billion investment in this just a couple weeks ago, I think. Nikola, their stock rose above Ford for one day there. Lordstown had a visit from Vice President Pence, and Ford, they are also now committed to making a fully electric pickup, not just a plug-in hybrid. Tesla is also now the world's most valuable car maker. So their market value is now valued more than Toyota, which has traditionally always been the most valued automaker there, which just goes to show that investor confidence in EVs is growing, because the Tesla, their sales are for sure way lower than Toyota, but investors are seeing that the direction is now electric, and so they're getting behind full electric automakers, like Tesla, like Rivian, like others. Another quick market update is that electric, the medium and heavy duty sector, vehicle options are growing, and then the policy support is also growing. Now this probably more so than even the light duty vehicle sector, medium and heavy duty sector is kind of where it's at right now. That is growing leaps and bounds. And I listed 4 automakers there: Mack, Peterbilt, Daimler, and Volvo. They are also exploring partnerships with various battery producers. They're exploring partnerships with one another, looking at how they can improve their chassis. And we're talking everything from delivery vans up through electric garbage trucks. So that sector is really taking off. And helping that along is the policy world. So just recently, California adopted a clean truck rule. And then just on this past Monday, there were 14 states, I think, and the District of Columbia, which also signed an MOU supporting the direction that California was going with that clean truck rule. And what they've agreed to in the MOU is that by 2030, 30% of new truck and bus sales will be fully electric. And by 2050, 100% of those sales. So that's pretty significant, because those states there are representing at least 50% of the US economy, and it represents 40% of the goods moved throughout the United States in terms of their value. A couple more quick things here. So Series, they launched their corporate EV alliance back in January 2020. And then sales of EVs, just a quick note on that. Obviously with COVID, sales in the United States were down, sales in China were down a little bit, but actually sales in Europe increased over the past Q1 and Q2. A lot of people seeing the tie-in of electric vehicles and better air quality. And then finally, Bloomberg, just a few months ago, they also came out with their new kind of more aggressive forecast about electric vehicles, and they are forecasting that by 2040, 58% of new sales, or global sales, and new sales of vehicles will be electric. So all of that activity is going to lay the groundwork now for what Travis is going to talk about why electric vehicles. So I'm going to turn it to Travis. He can introduce himself and take it away.
Thanks, Catherine. So my name is Travis Madsen. I run the transportation program at the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. We're a nonprofit public interest advocacy organization working to get more done with the energy that we have available in our economy and accelerate the deployment of clean transportation. I'm going to talk a little bit about why this is happening, why vehicles are going electric, and what specifically this will mean for business owners. Next slide, please. I'm not seeing the slide advance.
It's thinking.
Okay. All right. Well, so there's kind of 3 things that I wanted to just touch on here.
There we go. Oh, now it went too far.
Yeah, okay. 3 things I'm going to touch on. First is just that the technology is a big leap forward in terms of energy efficiency in transportation. Second, battery technology has really improved a lot in the last decade. The pattern looks to me a lot like solar power, where there's just been a huge improvement in the technology and the cost. And then lastly, making the transition from oil to electricity for transportation is going to deliver huge savings for Nevada that will benefit everyone, but particularly businesses. Next slide. So there we go. Vehicles are more efficient. If you compare different kinds of vehicles in terms of their efficiency, the EPA does this by calculating a miles per gallon equivalent across the different fuels. You can see that electric motors are about 3 times more energy efficient than combustion motors. So this figure here shows the Chevy Bolt EV compared to a hybrid, compared to a Honda Civic and a Ford Escape. The Bolt EV makes sure that a lot more of the energy used to drive the vehicle actually makes it to the wheels, whereas the combustion cars waste a lot of that energy in the form of heat. Next slide. This translates into major cost savings that are available with electric vehicles, especially when you're looking at fuel costs and maintenance costs. So there's a couple of places that have deployed electric vehicles in larger numbers. I do a lot of work with local governments, so City of Sacramento and New York I think are 2 good examples. The City of Sacramento's city fleet, they are saving about 75% on the operation costs of fuel and maintenance for their Chevy Bolts versus comparable sedans. In the New York City fleet, they looked at the total cost of ownership of Nissan Leaf EVs compared to Ford Fusions in their fleet. And even when you include the upfront cost of the vehicle, because the fuel and maintenance is so cheap, they are saving about $1,000 a year on their Leaf EVs in terms of the total cost of ownership of the vehicles. And these kinds of savings are available across the different kinds of vehicles. So not just cars, but on up to the bigger kinds of vehicles, medium and heavy duty vehicles as well. Next slide. So this trend is only going to get more pronounced. And the main reason for that is because batteries are getting really cheap fast. Since 2010, the cost of a lithium-ion battery has gone down by more than 90%. And with every doubling of manufacturing of batteries, costs go down by about 18%. This figure is from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And their projections are that the cost of these batteries are just going to continue to decline as manufacturing increases. It's a lot like the trend that we see with solar panels. And that means that the cost picture for EVs is only going to get better as time goes on. Next slide. So this curve shows projected costs of ownership over 5 years of different kinds of battery electric vehicles. So the 3 different BEV 250, BEV 200, BEV 150. That refers to the range of the electric vehicle, and we're talking about sedans here. The other 2 lines are for conventional combustion cars or for plug-in hybrids. And you can see that the cost of the battery electric vehicles are dropping really fast, whereas the cost for the conventional vehicles or even the plug-in hybrids are not changing very much. That's because the conventional car technology has been around for a really long time, and there's not much that the automakers can do to improve the economics of that, whereas batteries are getting really cheap really fast. So we're approaching a period in time where the cost of ownership of an EV is going to be dramatically lower than a conventional car, and that means cost savings. Next slide. So what does this mean for local businesses? I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. The first one is that if your customers have cheaper transportation, they're spending less of their money on getting around, that means they're going to have more money in their pockets and more money available to spend at your business. Second is there's opportunities for businesses to install charging stations, particularly at long dwell locations like hotels or restaurants. Consumers will go to those places to charge up their vehicles, and it's an opportunity to attract more spending. Third, switching out oil for electricity means that more of the money that people spend on transportation will stay in Nevada. That's because electricity is a domestic resource. It's produced locally, whereas there's no oil in Nevada. So more money available in the local economy will benefit everyone. We've done some estimates of the benefits of this, not specifically for Nevada, but in other neighboring states, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. And I'm estimating that the net economic benefits of transitioning to electric vehicles in Nevada is in the tens of billions of dollars, and that's net present value from now through 2050. There's also a bunch of jobs that will be directly created in the clean vehicle industry, and Susan from Environmental Entrepreneurs is going to talk a little bit more about that in her section of the presentation. That's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks Travis. So keep in mind this slide when I transition to the next one now, all of these great benefits. And so which is the reason why Nevada really wanted to unlock those benefits and understand, well, how can consumers take advantage of this transition to an electric transportation future? How can businesses take advantage of all these benefits that are looming before Nevada? And so just recently at the end of June, the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection announced their start of a rulemaking process to adopt what is called the Clean Cars Nevada. In some states, it's called the Advanced Clean Cars Program. But what it is, it's the start of a rulemaking process to evaluate whether or not the state should adopt low emission vehicle standards and zero emission vehicle standards for light duty vehicles. So we're not even talking about the medium and heavy duty sector that's not on the table right now. It's just the light duty vehicle sector. And with those two pieces, that the regulation, it applies to the automaker. And so with the low emission vehicle regulation or the standard there, what it does is it requires that the automaker provide more cars that are emitting fewer greenhouse gases and fewer criteria air pollutants, make those cars available for sale in Nevada. And with the zero emission standard, it's the same thing, only that if the automaker wants to be selling cars in Nevada, they'll have to provide a certain percentage of those cars to be zero emission or electric vehicles. And so for businesses and for consumers, what this is doing is then increasing your availability of the inventory, and especially in the Reno area. I've heard a story twice now from two separate people wanting to purchase a Subaru, which they have a plug-in hybrid version, a plug-in electric hybrid. And there was none on the lots, and they were told that they have to go out to California to, Sacramento, that area. And so this Clean Cars Nevada, by adopting this rule fully, there will be these Subarus, electric Subarus, on the lots for purchase. This rule is not requiring you to purchase anything, it's just giving you the option. Another thing to just point out really briefly here too is that this is just one step of a multi-step process, a multi-year effort. And so Nevada will hopefully adopt this by sometime in 2021. Over the next few months, there'll be a stakeholder process with comments where you can write in, a hearing, all that stuff. And then in 2021, if the rule is adopted, there'll be a 2-year grace period. And so essentially the rule won't take effect even until 2024. And by that time, I think the world will maybe, who knows the rate this year is going, what the world will look like, but for sure in the transportation electrification sector, we're gonna see a lot more advancements, a lot more adoption just around the country, light duty sector, medium heavy duty, etc. So this is just one part of the clean energy economy and just one way that Nevada is stepping forward into that clean energy economy, but Susan is now going to speak briefly about some other initiatives, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So Susan?
Great. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be on this call today. By way of introduction, E2 is a national nonpartisan group of business leaders. We care about policy that's good for the economy and good for the environment. We got our start around 20 years ago advocating in California for the first clean cars emission standards in the world. And since then, E2 has grown to 9 chapters across the country. Our Mountain West chapter started in 13 years ago. I'm the Mountain West advocate for E2, or Environmental Entrepreneurs. We have about 8,000 members and supporters across the country, and many work in clean energy, but a lot work in real estate or investing, restaurants, and many other sectors. We bring these business voices to state and federal legislators where they tell their story about the economic benefits of smart climate and clean energy policies. Next slide, please. Part of our work at E2 is publishing the annual Clean Jobs America report. This year's report showed at, there's a slide with a little, I'll just keep talking. This year's report shows at the start of 2020, clean energy employment increased for the 5th straight year, growing beyond 3.3 million workers nationwide. In Nevada, there were about 33,800 clean jobs, an increase of 5% over the previous year. These jobs are in renewables, energy efficiency, clean vehicles, grid and storage, and clean fuels. And also cross this supply chain, as you can see in the diagram on the right. So these jobs include electricians, HVAC technicians, construction workers, upgrading buildings with insulation, energy efficient windows and LED lighting, factory workers making Energy Star appliances. There are people making electric vehicles, engineers designing, and workers installing solar and wind projects. So it covers a large part of the economic sector. Next slide, please. As Travis mentioned, a clean cars rule will help Nevada's economy and drive innovation. We know that private investment in EV technology, including research, development, and production, is flowing at higher rates to states that have adopted clean cars rules. If Nevada adopts clean car rules, we can expect technology innovation for the advanced vehicle and battery industries to increase in the state. EV charging infrastructure will also expand, and it will boost electrical, constructing, and engineering jobs. Next slide, please. We have all felt the effects of COVID in the economy, and we need to get Nevadans back to work. The clean energy sector was growing the fastest in the country pre-COVID. That includes clean transportation. As Nevada moves towards more electric vehicles, car charging infrastructure in the cities and across the state will develop. The state is also part of Rev West, which is a memorandum of understanding to create an Intermountain West electric vehicle corridor that will make it possible to seamlessly drive an electric vehicle across 8 mountain states, including Nevada. Electrifying government and commercial fleets will support the EV industry and provide savings through lower maintenance and fueling costs, which Travis also went over. Nevada can expect increased EV tourism as they build out charging infrastructure in recreational areas and throughout the cities. EV drivers will shop at businesses that provide chargers and stay a while, as in these photos. We know we can build back better and back faster with clean energy, and clean cars will be and can be more a part of the economic recovery. Every part of the state will benefit. Last slide, please. I just wanted to mention that all our reports on these clean jobs are at our website, which is e2.org. That's e2.org. And that's it for my part. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Susan. So here, we just wanted to leave you all with a couple next steps here about what you can do. We're always big advocates of test driving the vehicles themselves. And so, if you feel comfortable venturing out, test driving an EV whenever you get the chance to. There's also group buy programs that, where you can work with an automaker and provide hundreds or however many of the vehicles at a discount to businesses or to a certain region. And then there's also a website that we've just linked to there. If you'd like to stay informed on the clean cars process, it's really easy to sign up. So now, Christine, I think we wanted to just open it up to Q&A and to a dialogue, and feel free to ask whatever.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you, Travis and Susan and Tom. I think that you're still on here. Hopefully those tech issues have been mitigated. It's great to have all of you here with us. Thank you for sharing that information. And it is now is the time to talk about how recovery is going to come about as we emerge from COVID, as we live with COVID, and how we can have that intersection of economic recovery and environmental standards really have a symbiotic relationship to where we're all helping each other. Everything sounds fantastic. Just a couple questions and a reminder to participants on the call, go ahead and send in your questions through chat as you have them. I know that our speakers would love to address whatever questions that you may have on your mind. But to get started, I think I'd love to hear a little bit more about how Clean Car standards will be implemented. Can you share a little bit about that process and even what accountability might look like?
Sure. So I can start with that, and then Travis, if you want to add in. So, I mean, in terms of the process, there'll be a number of hearings and um, meetings held over the next couple months, and I don't think that they've announced that schedule yet or that timeline yet. And then there will have to be a review, I think, by one of the legislative committees, and then, and Tom, you might also know this too better than I do. And then once the rule is adopted, then, as I mentioned, so the automakers will have a few years to be coming into compliance with this. And so it shouldn't technically be too hard or too big of a lift for them, because there's a number of other states. There's 9 other states plus California, actually 10 other states, Colorado, and then now also Washington, Minnesota, and New Mexico are looking at all adopting this rule too. And so the automakers are prepared for this. And so if they don't meet these certain the low emission vehicle standard there, or they're not supplying the right cars to Nevada, then they will have to pay a certain fee back to the state, or they'll have to purchase credits. So Travis, do you want to add more to that, or Tom? So they're held accountable in a number of different ways, but that does take some time to see that.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would add is of all the states that have adopted this, I'm not aware of anywhere any automaker was out of compliance. All automakers are either have EVs available for sale now or in the process of deploying them, and they all have plug-in hybrids. And yeah, the states that have adopted this policy are the ones that are getting access to the newest electric vehicle models first. We just did this in Colorado and where I live, and the state gave some early action credits to automakers who choose to provide vehicles now rather than waiting to when our policy goes into effect in 2 years. So we're already starting to see more of the newer EV models available here in the state, and I expect that would be the same case in Nevada if the state completes adopting the policy.
All right, thank you for that. I think turning attention to credits and incentives. I know that we've drawn parallels between vehicle electrification and solar panels a couple times throughout our call so far. I'm curious, especially since a lot of our members are maybe small businesses. Some of them are larger. They may have the ability to do a little bit more change of their operations and infrastructure to allow for greater electrification of perhaps their fleets, or installing charging stations. But what kinds of incentives or even tax credits might be available to businesses who want to jump on board? Does anyone know?
Travis, you want to go first?
There's a federal tax credit available for purchasing an EV, and then that policy does need some improvement. The automakers that have done the most to deploy EVs are starting to run out of tax credit, and so I'm hoping that at some point here we can get Congress to extend the availability of those credits. But there's definitely still models where the tax credit's still available. So that's for the federal side, and maybe Catherine or Tom, you could talk a little bit about the state level.
Tom, we see your mouth moving, but we don't hear anything.
Oh no.
Well, so the state, the state of Nevada, they're considering looking at a number of different policies there to incentivize the purchase, or to help with the purchase, we should say, and to make that choice to drive electric. NV Energy has some programs out there to help with the charging station installation. And there's also a federal tax credit that can help with the charging station installation there. It's about 30% of the cost of the charging station, or the lesser, we'll just go with 30%, because that policy is about to change. But that's certainly something that's on the table to potentially, as we approach the start of the legislative session, then in not the special session, but the real start in next year, it could be something that's on the table too.
Right, certainly. And turning now, I know we've got just a couple minutes left, so if any participants have any questions, now is the time to fire them off, so please go ahead. But the last question that I have, and I'm hoping that that there's at least a general familiarity with Reno's climate action plan. How will electric vehicle use help Reno specifically achieve its climate action goals?
Tom? Tom knows about this a lot.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, within the sustainability plan, there's the directive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and so I think you know, zero emission vehicles have, and particularly the full battery electric cars, they have no tailpipe, and so they're not emitting any greenhouse gas emissions, no carbon emissions, and so this will go leaps and bounds towards helping Reno achieve those objectives within the plan. Do you want to add more, Travis?
Yeah, I would just say that in most of the cities I'm working in the region, transportation is the largest source of carbon dioxide pollution. So transitioning vehicles from oil to electricity is one of the primary solutions to climate change. And it's also cool to think about how the work we're doing to deploy more clean energy, more wind and solar and whatnot on the electricity grid can translate into cleaner vehicles as well. Because once you've deployed an electric vehicle, it will continue to get cleaner as the electricity grid does. So I think it's one of the things we're going to have to do in Reno and in every city that is proceeding to act on climate.
Right, absolutely. I know a couple weeks ago we had Dr. Kristen Averett with us, who's the Nevada State Climate Policy Coordinator. Fantastic and fascinating call. And for anyone who missed it, you can find it on our YouTube channel. We post all of our calls to our YouTube channel about a week after the fact. So if you want to check that out, please go ahead. But one of the things that she said is number one on the list is addressing that particulate matter, and of course bring it full circle to COVID. So much when it comes to public health has to do with air quality. That we're talking about the same issue when we're saying we want to address climate change and we want to address public health. That is a very important intersection of those two topics. And even with economic recovery, I'm really grateful that you were able to point out today just how those net savings will come into play. How if the more Nevada adopts climate initiatives, the more attractive some of those more innovative industries will be to Nevada. We will see those industries come in through the door. We will see jobs created that are more sustainable into the future. So these are all good things for our members to know and to keep in mind. So to close things out, I'm not seeing any questions in chat, but to close things out, other than test driving vehicles, is there anything else that the Chamber specifically and its members can do to help move the clean car initiatives forward?
Well, I'd say that, the business voice, and Susan, you can talk about this too. The business voice is always very welcomed, before your policymakers. So to let them know that you support this is always super helpful to our efforts on the other side. Plug in America is coming from the consumer point of view too, the EV driver voice. And so letting policymakers know that the businesses are backing up what the consumers are saying here and showing that demand for this, that's super helpful. And then again, there's the group buy program, which if the businesses in the Reno Chamber were interested, you could take a poll of who is potentially interested in purchasing one of these cars and then reach out to some of the automakers. And they're, you never know, they might be willing to put forward a special deal or a special price. And we've certainly seen that in other areas of the country.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
The other
much.
thing I would suggest, is like, if you have a fleet of vehicles in your business, take a look at what would go into electrifying some of those vehicles. And if you identify obstacles that are in your way, let me know. My job is to help get rid of those obstacles, but also I think NV Energy is going to be a key player in helping businesses to overcome obstacles that might be making it harder to electrify your fleet, whether it's charging stations or upgrading power lines or whatever. NV Energy is going to be a key player.
Awesome.
And as the process moves through the state agency, it's going to take a lot of your voices, which are really important to help talk about the economic benefits. So if you're interested, there will be some actions that I'll be organizing. You can either contact me at snadell@e2.org, or maybe send an email to Ann, and Ann can forward it if folks are really interested in raising their voices. It's really important, and your voices are really effective.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a great empowering place to leave us today. And I thank you all once again, Catherine, Travis, Tom. I wish we could have heard from you. My apologies for any tech issues that have been happening. And also Susan, thank you so much for your insight as well. And once again, to our members, thank you for hopping on this call. If you want to reference anything that you've heard, you'll be able to watch the call in its entirety on our YouTube channel. And you can always reach out to either Ann or myself to get connected to anyone you heard from today. We're happy to make those connections for you as you need. So thank you everyone for joining in, and we will see you again soon.